Over to you, Neil. Thank you.
My name's Neil, I'm a recovered drug addict.
Hey, Neil.
Yeah. There's a couple of reasons why I introduced myself as recovered. One of them is in chapter 7 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It says I should be introduced to the alcoholic or addict who still suffers as one who's recovered. So that's what I do. The word recovered actually comes up 12 times in the Big Book. Recovering comes up once, and it refers to the family afterward. Does that mean I'm cured? No, I'm pretty sure if I start to use substances, the same thing that always happens would start to happen again. At some point I would lose control and my life starts to fall apart. Yeah, that's why I'm here. The other reason is I've been in and out of meetings, 12-step meetings, since June 1999, and sometimes with periods of sobriety lasting several years in one case, and then a few days, few weeks, few months. I've never been to a meeting of Cocaine Anonymous, and I actually got signposted by someone who worked in a drug service. He was a member of another fellowship, and he said, "Have you tried CA?" He said, I said, well, no, not really, but because I told him that I was done with meetings and trying to get recovery. And he said, well, why don't you go over there? They do things a bit different there. I thought, right, okay. So I went to this first meeting and I thought, right, if I don't hear something different in this meeting, that's it. I am done with meetings. I'm done with fellowships. I'm just going to go on to the bitter end. Right? And, went in there, the first person who introduced himself as a recovered alcoholic. Boom, straight away. Something I hadn't heard before. I didn't understand what it meant back then either. And it got explained to me, that the Big Book talks about being recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. I heard it put a slightly different way, but meaning the same thing, is that I've recovered from the hopelessness, which is a good thing. I'll talk about Roland in a minute, but hope was dangerous for me in the beginning, when I was relapsing and really trying to get this. And I was going to meetings every week, and I even had a sponsor. I wasn't being honest with him. But hope was dangerous because I just kind of sat at home and held on to this hope that something was going to change. Maybe if this happens, maybe if I do this, maybe, holding on to this kind of thread of hope. And what happened to me, it was only when I had a true realisation of the hopelessness of my condition that seemed to bring about the recovery process for me. Yeah, it was nothing to do with me. All I did was keep relapsing. And that just kept happening to me. And and going back to meetings with my tail in between my legs, and again, just trying to reassert myself with this. I must do more of this. I must try more of that, and just couldn't seem to bring about that surrender. I used to, I've heard a lot of things in meetings over the years. One thing I used to hear over and over again was, eventually I surrendered to the program. All right, okay, well that's not my experience. If I had the power to bring about my own surrender to this process, I'd have done it a fucking long time ago. And I'd still be clean and sober today. My experience is I had to get surrendered. Heroin and crack cocaine were the great persuader for me. And that was it. So Roland, I love that he... Carl Jung, he was the top psychiatrist, psychotherapist in the world, and Roland Hazard had the money to go and visit this guy and pay for the best psychological interventions that money could buy. And apparently, I've done a bit more reading on this, apparently he spent a year with Carl Jung, right? So that it'd be like being like a year in treatment. And working on all these subconscious triggers and springs, and this was Carl Jung's thing, he was the expert. And Roland goes back full of confidence. He's had the best treatment money can buy. He goes back and he drinks again, and he can't understand why, and he's rightly terrified by that. This is terrifying information for me. If I'm telling this information to a new guy and they're smiling, and it's just like, but it hadn't dropped yet. For me, when I truly realised the gravity of this relapse condition from which I suffer, it was a physical sensation. I mean, I was on the floor. It was like my heart dropped out my arsehole. I mean, it was just, horrendous and terrifying, but at the same time a great relief. I don't know what happened. Something like what Carl Jung then goes on to describe to Roland when Roland says, "Is there any hope for me?" And Carl Jung says, "Well, I've seen cases like yours, and I've not seen one recover. To where the problem exists to the extent that it does within you." Yeah, and Roland, he's not happy with that news, but then Carl Jung, he tags on to the end of it. He says, "Well," Roland says, "Was there no hope for me?" And he says, "Well, I have seen certain, alcoholics of your type have these things called spiritual experiences." I'm paraphrasing, obviously, summarising the next part of spiritual experience. He says, "To me, these are phenomena, as in I don't really understand what it is, but they appear to be in the nature of sudden emotional upheavals, displacements." And this was the real key, I think, for me, and what I experienced then is he then goes on to say that, again, I'm paraphrasing, old ideas, thoughts, plans, everything suddenly gets cast to one side. That's what had to happen for me. Yeah. I was out of ideas, I was out of plans on what I was going to do to try and fix this problem. Yeah. At that point I was done. And I felt it, and I knew I was done. And that was it for me. Really from that, the rest of the process of going through the steps just flowed, man. That was heroin and crack that did that for me. All of my best efforts. So what happened in 1999? I had a spell in treatment. I did 6 months treatment. I learned about addiction, apparently. I was told that if I ever used again, I'd be in trouble. And if you have the first one, that's it, you won't be able to stop. And I could see that from my experience. That made perfect sense to me. And that is part of it. But on the back of that, the message that I heard, I'm not sure exactly, well, I'm pretty sure this is what they were saying in some of the places I was going to, was, well, if you just don't have the first one, you'll be all right. Yeah. My problem is I don't have the power to stop myself from taking the first one. Yeah. The alcoholic insanity that Dr. Jung was trying to describe, and he wasn't an alcoholic, so he didn't have the benefit of, Bill and all those first 100 talking about what was happening to them with their relapses. But he called it an alcoholic insanity, didn't he, Carl Jung? So I think that's where the idea came from. And I used to hear things like, insanity, that's repeating the same mistake and expecting different results. It's like, well, yeah, okay. So what I've begun to, what I identified from the first few chapters of the big book is that the insanity for me is a lack of sane thought. Yeah. I know, looking at my spirit, I know what happens to me when I use, but I do it again. Yeah. There should be a sane thought. When I have the idea, whether it's an overwhelming, powerful desire, obsessive thinking about using or not, there should be something engaging with me that does not. Thought heroin. Most people, generally speaking, when someone says, "Hey, do you want some heroin?" they kind of go, "No." However, I got into drugs, we get into drugs, it's immaterial. At some point when it started getting bad and I recognised that it was destroying my life, even at 18 years of age, there should have been a sane thought. Should there not? Yeah, Neil, this is what happens to you. You end up remanded in custody, fucking rattling. You end up on begging your mum for a tenner. You end up stealing, you end up... I committed a crime when I was 18 years old and I nearly went to prison for a first offence. In my desperation, to get money to buy heroin, it was really apparent that heroin wasn't good for me. But yet still, You know, I went back to it. Many attempts to clean up. Yeah, so I went to, prior to going to a treatment centre, I went to a treatment centre, I got this information, and they told me I'd have to be abstinent. I said, cool, no problem. Did 6 months in treatment. See, my experience is, once you remove me from heroin and crack cocaine and pills, whatever it was I was doing at the time, I'm all right. Yeah, for me personally, what is left for me is all right, you know, especially at 21 years of age. I've been dropped into a treatment centre in the middle of the Gloucestershire Cotswolds in June. Beautiful, you know, I went fishing on a Saturday, went to the gym on a Tuesday, had fresh bedding, and it was all right. I had to sit in group therapy and, you know, do all this kind of thing, and yeah, you know, it was cool. It was, you know, it was all right. Started doing hobbies, yeah, martial arts and stuff, and I was going to loads of meetings, you know. And I'm all right. And I was all right for about another 6 years, just going to meetings. I kind of did a middle-of-the-road effort with the steps. What I now know to be an illusion of power crept into my life. Because when you have 6 years of abstinence, that's long enough, 6 going on 7, I suppose. That's long enough to build a pretty decent life for yourself, yeah? I had my own business, I was earning good money, I had a lovely girlfriend, she had 2 little boys, we used to go playing in the woods and, you know, games, you know, just, you know, I had a great life. Then my mind reintroduced the insane idea, you know, that it might be right to have a few drinks. And then what should have happened is I should have been able to remember what happens to me, you know, but I didn't. And yeah, you know, there was that and some pills and, you know, painkillers, that kind of thing, and blagging, and that turned into blagging, more painkillers off my doctor's sleeping tablets, you know, and I was gone. And then I think about 3 months later, I was walking up to a big issue seller and saying, who's about, you know, with a pocket full of money. They used to think I was a copper, a police officer. So every time I turned up, I was waiting to see someone, I'd see there'd be people waiting on the corner and they'd all start like get on their phones and start walking away, and I'd phone a man and say, has someone just phoned you and said there's a dodgy bloke? Yeah, sorry, it's me. So, but you know, deteriorated very, very quickly, and then from then on, really, it was about 10, 11 years of constant efforts to try and stop, going back to meetings, in and out and in and out and in and out, and I needed to hear something different, yeah. And honestly, they didn't know what to do with me, these meetings I was going to. I knew, just don't fucking use, no matter what. Right, get phone numbers, phone someone. Yeah, when you're going to use, phone someone. Yeah. Sometimes I would when I had thoughts of using, but, you know, actually what I've realised now is when that mental twist happens, I ain't going to phone you. Yeah, I'm not going to phone a sponsor. Yeah, I'm already gone, I'm already doing it, it's already happening. Yeah, against my willpower. I have no part in it. This is what I've learned about it. And that's a terrifying condition. So Roland was rightly terrified. Then Carl Jung pointed him in this direction of a spiritual experience. You know, so why do I need to have a spiritual experience, Guy? I kind of look at this stuff again, and there's no doubt that for me, you know, as a result of this process and where I've trying to develop and grow in my step 11, and, you know, so that I can be more effective with working with others, that I have now in my life experienced a level of contentment, inner well-being that I've not had before, you know, for sure. And that's very nice. But, you know, I think all I needed to know in the beginning was that I don't have the power to stop myself from taking that first one. The other side of that coin is, well, therefore I do not have the power to bring about my recovery. It has to come from another power. So I went through this process, you know, I was done relapsing, as I was telling you about earlier, you know, I was just done, and the guy I was working with at the time, my first sponsor, he could see that, and he just put step 4 under me. You know, as I was detoxing, and I did step 4. I did it imperfectly, but it was there. You know, it just boom, do a step 4, Neil. Yep, no worries. That's how it was for me. Yeah, I'm going to share that with me. Yep, cool. That's how it was for me. Here's your list of defects of character. Cool. Here's your step 8 list. Cool. As soon as I had the energy to walk up the hill after I'd finished detoxing, I had a long detox in Cocaine Anonymous, by the way. I didn't get the opportunity to go to a treatment centre or anything like that because there wasn't any funding. I was held by a fellowship. I had the information in the big book and a sponsor. And as soon as I had the energy to walk up the hill, I was like making amends to my parents. Powerful experience that was. And then halfway through my amends, I already had a step 10 and 11 practice in place. A sponsor gave me the green light. He said, right, okay, you know what we've been talking about this whole time. You've got to work with others. Off you go. Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. I used to be a teacher. I used to teach martial arts, actually. That was what I did in this period of sobriety. That was one of my strategies. You can't start teaching till you get to like a brown belt and a black belt. I don't do it anymore, by the way. You can't start teaching till you get to like a brown belt. And I was learning all this great stuff, the movement, and there was like Zen philosophy in there as well, spiritual. It was a really fucking cool subject. I loved it. And it was only when I started to try to teach what I'd learned that I really began to understand the depth of the subject. And I think that is true, for all of us here. It's when I'm working with others. Sometimes there's things that come out of my mouth that I didn't even know I know, or know I knew. It's like, fuck, where did that come from? This whole process, going through the steps and trying to be free of self. Because the self is blocking me off from this power, and and it's massive. It's creative. It's inspiring. Yeah, the only thing that stops me from being connected to that is me, my thinking, my self-will. Resentment, fear, all of that kind of stuff. I have to be free of that stuff. Why? So I can help that new guy get free of it too. And that experience, it just begins to perpetuate itself. And it's a fucking beautiful way to live. Beautiful way to live. Yeah, there is always, that for me personally, more so just recently, there has just been an undercurrent of okayness, regardless of what is going on. And that is beautiful. That's a result of all of this. But it had to come from that understanding, that realisation of what I suffer from. And all of that came from there. It's the hopelessness that gives birth to the hope. One of those weird paradoxes, man. Do you know what, my man? I'm going to leave it there, my friend.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you very much. Fantastic. I'll now open the